All right, let's dive in. Today, we're looking at conglomerates, those giant corporations that seem to be everywhere. The ones that always spark debate about their power and influence.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
We've got a lot to unpack, so we're using Conglomerate Ascendancy as our main guide. We'll explore their history, their strategies, and the impact they have on all of us.
One thing that people often forget is that conglomerates aren't exactly new. They've been around for a while
Oh,
now.
for sure. Conglomerate Ascendancy traces them all the way back to the late 1800s during the Industrial Revolution.
Wow, so like back when guys like J.P. Morgan and Cornelius Vanderbilt were building their empires?
Exactly. They were merging businesses left and right.
I guess they saw the potential early on. Combine forces, gain more control, and boost those shareholder profits.
It's wild how those early conglomerates didn't just make money, they shaped entire industries and jump-started economic growth. But conglomerate ascendancy doesn't stop there. It goes on to explain how they adapted to globalization, changing technologies, and all those new rules and regulations.
Now that's what I call evolution.
Yeah,
Just look at digital conglomerates like Amazon, Google, Facebook.
they've completely flipped the script on traditional industries. They're practically rewriting the rules of business as we speak.
It's mind-boggling.
Speaking of rewriting rules,
Yeah.
the book dives into two key strategies conglomerates use to expand: vertical and horizontal integration.
The classic power plays.
Let's start with vertical. What's the deal with that?
Well, with vertical integration, a company takes control of different stages of making a product from start to finish.
Like a one-stop shop.
Pretty much. A great example is Tesla. They don't just make electric cars. They control battery production, they write their own software, they even have their own charging stations.
So they're like a vertically integrated empire of electric vehicles.
You got it. The book uses Amazon as another example. They sell stuff, they have this huge delivery network, and they even make their own TV shows and movies.
That's Amazon for you. Always got to have their hands in everything.
It's a smart strategy, though. By controlling the whole process, they can keep costs down, make sure everything's up to their standards, and give customers that smooth, seamless experience.
Makes sense. Now let's move on to horizontal integration. What's that all about?
Horizontal integration is when a company gobbles up its competitors, either by buying them out or merging with them.
Like a Pac-Man strategy.
Exactly. Think about Facebook buying Instagram. That wasn't just about adding another app to their collection. It was about consolidating their power, getting even more user data, reaching more people with ads, and maybe even squashing a potential rival.
That's a power move if I've ever seen one.
Yeah.
No wonder regulators watch these mergers so closely. They don't want one company to control the whole show, right?
Right. Monopolies are bad news for everyone except the company that's on top.
Now, the book also talks about diversification, calling it a double-edged sword for conglomerates. What's that all about?
Well, diversification is like not putting all your eggs in one basket. It's about spreading your risk by investing in different industries.
I get it. So if one industry takes a hit, you've got others to fall back on.
Exactly. But it can backfire too. Remember that AOL Time Warner merger?
Oh, yeah, that was a disaster.
It was supposed to create this media giant, but it just didn't work. They couldn't make it all fit together, and it ended up hurting both companies.
So diversification can be a smart move, but only if it's done right. It's a reminder that just being bigger doesn't automatically equal success.
You got that right.
Now, let's shift gears and talk about leadership. The book makes a big deal about how important good leadership is for these complex beasts.
It makes sense. Leading a conglomerate isn't like running a regular company. You're dealing with a whole bunch of different businesses, often in completely different fields. It takes a special kind of leader to make that work.
Like someone who can see the big picture and make tough decisions when they need to.
You nailed it. And they have to be adaptable too, because the world is constantly changing, and conglomerates need to change with it.
Conglomerate Ascendancy uses Lou Gerstner as an example. He took over IBM when it was on the verge of collapse and turned it into a success story. That's impressive.
Talk about a turnaround. He had to make some hard choices, but he had a vision for the future of IBM, and he made it happen.
Leadership really can make or break a conglomerate.
No doubt about it. Now let's get into the financial side of things. The book dives into how these giants manage their money, talking about profitability, debt, and investment strategies.
It's got to be a mind-boggling amount of number crunching.
It is. They're making money from all sorts of sources, and they're constantly figuring out how to handle debt and make smart investments. Take Berkshire Hathaway, for instance.
Ah, yes, the Warren Buffett empire.
He's a master of investing, and his strategy has made Berkshire Hathaway incredibly successful.
It's amazing how they handle these massive sums of money and make decisions that impact entire industries.
It's a whole different level of finance. And speaking of different levels, Conglomerate Ascendancy also talks about globalization, which has brought both opportunities and challenges for these companies.
I can imagine. Going global means dealing with different cultures, different rules, and different economic conditions. It's a whole new ballgame.
It is. The book points to Nestle as a success story. They've become a global food giant by understanding local markets and adapting their strategies accordingly.
So to succeed globally, you can't just copy and paste your approach. You need to understand the local game.
You got it. Now, of course, we can't forget the big players in the tech world, the elephants in the room. Companies like Amazon, Google, Facebook, and Apple,
Those guys are in a league of their own.
they've disrupted so many industries. Retail, media, communication, technology, and they've become global powerhouses in the process.
It's incredible how they've used technology to build these massive empires.
Their success is all about innovation, building user-friendly products, and creating those online ecosystems that keep people hooked.
I'm curious about how they've navigated all the regulations and legal battles they've faced. It seems like a constant tug of war.
It is. Conglomerate Ascendancy points to the Sherman Act of 1890 as a turning point. That was the first major antitrust law in the U.S.
So that's when the government started cracking down on monopolies.
Exactly. The Sherman Act forced conglomerates to rethink their strategies and be more careful about how much market power they grab.
It's interesting how those laws have evolved over the years as companies and technology have changed.
Yeah.
It seems like it's always a challenge to find that balance between promoting innovation and preventing too much corporate control.
It's a delicate balancing act.
And it makes you wonder, how far can these companies go? What will the future hold for them?
So we're back, diving deeper into the world of conglomerates. We've talked about their history, their strategies, the regulations they face. Now let's get into their impact on society.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because they've done a lot to boost the economy, created jobs, pushed innovation forward.
For sure. But there's also that other side, the concerns about competition, income inequality, their impact on the environment. It's a mixed bag, to say the least.
A real mixed bag.
Conglomerate Ascendancy uses Walmart as an example. They offer lower prices, which is great for consumers, but there's a downside.
Like what?
Well, they've often been accused of squeezing out smaller businesses, those mom-and-pop shops that can't compete with their prices. The book calls it the Walmart effect.
I've heard of that.
And it's not just Walmart. The book also talks about Amazon and how their dominance in e-commerce has made it tough for smaller retailers to survive.
It's the same story in a lot of industries, right? Tech, media, finance. These mega corporations are gobbling up market share. And it raises questions about whether that's good for competition in the long run.
Yeah, it's a valid concern. If a few companies control everything, will we see less innovation? Will consumers have fewer choices?
And then there's the whole issue of income inequality. These giant companies are making huge profits, but are those profits being shared fairly?
That's a debate that's been going on for a while now. Some people argue that conglomerates actually help reduce poverty by creating jobs and boosting the economy. Others say they contribute to the gap between the rich and the poor.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Absolutely. And we can't forget about the environment. Conglomerates have a big impact on the planet, both positive and negative.
Conglomerate Ascendancy talks about that too. How some companies are taking steps to reduce their carbon footprint and become more sustainable.
Right, like Google investing in renewable energy or Apple trying to reduce waste in their manufacturing process.
Those are good signs.
They are. But then you have cases like the BP oil spill, a stark reminder of what can go wrong when companies prioritize profit over environmental protection.
That was a disaster.
It was. It highlights the need for stronger regulations and a greater sense of corporate responsibility.
So it seems like conglomerates are a force to be reckoned with, for better or for worse.
No doubt about it. They shape our economy, our environment, even our culture.
And as we move further into the 21st century, technology will continue to play a massive role in how they evolve. The book specifically mentions artificial intelligence, big data, and automation.
Those are the game changers.
For example, it talks about how Amazon uses AI to personalize recommendations for customers and make their delivery network even more efficient.
It's like they're always one step ahead.
And it's not just Amazon. Google and Facebook are using AI to target ads, analyze user data, and develop new products. It's changing how they interact with us, on a very fundamental level.
And then you have big data, which is all about gathering and analyzing massive amounts of information.
Information about customers, about the market, about pretty much everything.
It's a goldmine for these companies. They can use it to identify trends, predict consumer behavior, make smarter decisions, but it also raises concerns about privacy and data security.
Big time. If these companies have so much information about us, how do we know it's being used responsibly?
That's a crucial question, and one that we need to keep asking.
Now let's talk about automation, which Conglomerate Ascendancy says is changing the nature of work itself.
Yeah, it's already happening. Companies are using robots and software to do tasks that humans used to do.
Which makes some people worry about job losses.
Rightfully so. It's a real concern and one that we need to address as a society.
We need to figure out how to prepare people for the jobs of the future, the jobs that won't be replaced by machines.
It's about adaptability and education. We have to make sure people have the skills they need to thrive in this changing world.
Absolutely. So with all these technological advancements, what does Conglomerate Ascendancy predict for the future of these corporate giants?
Well, they think we'll see a continued shift towards tech and service-based businesses.
Which makes sense, given how technology is changing everything.
Exactly. Those are the industries that are growing the fastest and innovating the most.
The book also predicts that these companies will become even more global.
They're already operating across borders, but they'll continue to expand into new markets and forge partnerships around the world.
Globalization is a powerful force.
It is. And another trend they highlight is the growing importance of sustainability and social responsibility.
So it's not just about profits anymore.
It's becoming less and less about profits alone. Consumers are demanding that companies operate ethically and sustainably.
They're voting with their wallets, choosing to support companies that align with their values.
Exactly. And companies are starting to realize that sustainability isn't just good for the planet, it's good for their bottom line.
It's about finding that balance between making money and making a positive impact.
Right. Companies that ignore this trend risk alienating consumers and damaging their reputation.
So it sounds like the future of conglomerates is a mix of opportunity and challenge.
It is. They have the potential to drive progress and solve global problems. But they also need to be mindful of their impact on society and operate responsibly.
Well, this has been an insightful conversation. We've covered a lot of ground, but there's still more to explore.
We'll be back for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll wrap up our discussion and share some final thoughts on these fascinating and complex companies.
All right, we're back for the final part of our deep dive into conglomerates. We've covered a lot of ground, from their history to their strategies, their impact, and what the future might hold. Now for the big question. Are they ultimately a force for good or bad?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And honestly, there's no easy answer. Conglomerate Ascendancy makes it clear that these companies are complex. Their influence is everywhere, and it's not always a simple black and white situation.
It's definitely nuanced. The book highlights both the good and the bad, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, you can't deny the role they've played in driving economic growth. They create jobs, they push innovation forward. Just think about all the products and services we use every day that come from these companies. The convenience of Amazon, the way we connect with Google, the entertainment we get from Disney.
It's hard to imagine our lives without them.
Right. But as we've talked about, there's the flip side to all of that.
Yeah, we can't ignore the concerns about competition, income inequality, the environment.
Exactly. There's the potential for these companies to stifle competition, to concentrate wealth in the hands of a few, to contribute to environmental problems.
It's like they have this incredible power. And with that power comes a lot of responsibility.
Conglomerate Ascendancy talks about the importance of things like antitrust laws, environmental regulations, ethical business practices. Those are all key to making sure this power is used responsibly.
So it's not just about letting these companies do whatever they want. It's about having rules in place to protect consumers and the market as a whole.
Right. But it's not just about government regulations either. Consumers have a role to play too.
How so?
Well, we have a lot of power as consumers. We vote with our wallets every day. By choosing to support companies that operate ethically and sustainably, we can send a message.
So we're not powerless in all of this. We can actually influence these big companies through our choices.
Absolutely. If enough consumers demand change, companies will have to listen. And speaking of change, corporate social responsibility is becoming increasingly important as well.
You mean the idea that companies should be accountable for their impact on society and the environment?
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between profit and purpose. doing well by doing good, as they say.
So where do we land on the verdict then? Are conglomerates ultimately good or bad?
It's not a simple answer. They can be a force for good and a source of harm. The key is to make sure they're operating responsibly, ethically, and sustainably.
That makes sense. This has been a fascinating deep dive. We've learned a lot about these powerful companies, the good, the bad, and everything in between.
And if you want to learn even more, I highly recommend checking out Conglomerate Ascendancy. It's a great read, full of insights. You can find it on Amazon, Kindle, and Google Play Books.
Great recommendation. And thanks to everyone for joining us on this deep dive into the world of conglomerates. Until next time, keep exploring and keep asking the tough questions.